G'day, my name's Josh and I love getting out in the outdoors. But on my adventures, I got to wondering, how did all this stuff get here? Well, I've done a bit of the research and I'm here to tell you about how our mountains were formed and about the cool critters that call them home. Come on, let's go take a look. Looking around, you wouldn't believe it, but for the longest time, New Zealand actually had no mountains. It was completely flat island after Gondwana land for 85 million years, with the mountains only emerging in the last 5 million, which makes them pretty young. It also means they're still growing. But hey, I know what you're thinking. How do mountains grow? Well, there are actually a few different processes happening in New Zealand to let this happen. The first of which is uplifting. You see, New Zealand has always been situated on the boundary line of the Australian and Indo-Pacific tectonic plates. These plates are always moving, and as they push together, they're pushing the land up in the middle, and that's what created the Southern Alps. In addition to uplifting, some mountains have been formed by sideways movement. Sideways movement has always been happening along the plate boundary, and over the last 15 to 20 million years, it's moved the land apart at least 480 kilometers. We know this by looking at the data in mountains in the northwest of the South Island and southwest that show that rocks have the same identical signature that shows that they once started in the same place. Did you know that the Southern Alps are actually one of the fastest growing mountain ranges in the entire world? The uplift in the Aoraki region alone over the last 2 to 3 million years could have been as much as 20,000 meters. Scientists theorize this by looking at the dislocation of the river terraces across the Alpine fault line that show over the last 10,000 years, the mountains have been growing at an average of 10 millimeters a year. Not much by our standards, but to a 5 million year old mountain, that's blazing quick. However, because of New Zealand's heavy rainfall, the mountain's height is pretty well restricted. Every year, more than 10,000 millimeters fall in the Alps on the south side of Hokitika. And much of the Alps throughout the country, near Fiordland and the northwest ranges, they receive 3,200 millimeters every year. This rain causes the erosion and pushes back on uplifting. The rain on the west coast is almost unique, as it is only here and the Chilean Andes that are the only significant barrier to the wet westerly winds that are circling the Southern Ocean. As the winds hit the mountains, they rise, cool, and give that heavy rainfall. In the Alps, rock is constantly splitting due to the stress of uplifting and dramatically shifting temperatures, constantly freezing and thawing. This causes it to crack, and with the rainfall, the erosion and weathering it receives cuts down on growth on Aoraki by around 5 mil a year. What are you in the drain for? Come on, let's go. Whoa. Many endemic species live in the mountains, like this kea here. He only lives in the Southern Alps, and that's what makes him endemic. Endemism describes a species or plant that only lives in one specific environment in one place in the world. As well as this, he's the world's only alpine parrot, which I think makes him pretty special. As well as this, kea are considered to be one of the most intelligent birds in the whole world. This lets them learn complex problem solving and foraging skills from other older kea using their beaks and sharp claws. As their environment changed, kea were quick to adapt, having been observed learning how to open windows and doors, as well as undo the drawstring on people's packs to get at their food. Notoriously mischievous, they like to yank out car aerials as well as the peck at the rubber around the window sills. As juveniles, they form gangs until they're old enough to mate. In the gangs, they're very playful with each other and even pull pranks on humans, like stealing things and throwing stones at them. Kea are omnivores and eat a wide variety of plants and animals. They use their sharp beaks to eat fruits and seeds, and also to dig out small bugs and larvae from rotting wood. You wouldn't expect it, but they also prey on baby birds and rotting sheep and deer carcasses. All in all, kea have carved out their own ecological niche in the mountain and are well suited to life there, having no natural predators prior to human colonization. Unfortunately, kea have been hugely impacted by introduced species like stoats and cats, which have brought their numbers down significantly. They are seldom shot, but it was once commonplace. Kea are omnivores and eat a wide variety of plants and animals. They use their sharp beaks to eat fruits and seeds, and also to dig out small bugs and larvae from rotting wood. You wouldn't expect it, but they also prey on baby birds and rotting sheep and deer carcasses. All in all, Kea have carved out their own ecological niche in the mountain and are well suited to life there, having no natural predators prior to human colonization. Unfortunately, Kea have been hugely impacted by introduced species like stoats and cats, which have brought their numbers down significantly. They are seldom shot, but it was once commonplace. An ecological niche is a biology term that describes how a population interacts with the environment with concern to predators and resources. For example, growing a number when there is an abundance of resources and lack of predators. An ecological niche is a biology term that describes how a population interacts with the environment with concern to predators and resources. For example, growing a number when there is an abundance of resources and lack of predators. Ecological niche also looks at how this growth affects the environment and how their consumption of resources affects species. The abiotic factors, which are non-living parts of the environment that can often have a major influence on living organisms, are water, sunlight, oxygen, soil, and temperature. These are all part of the ecological niche because of how it influences populations. The Kea is thought to have developed through speciation 2 to 3 million years ago as a result of the gradual uplift of its environment, an area that would become the Southern Alps. Another interesting bird is the New Zealand rock wren, played today by an actual rock. This is the world's only true alpine bird, as even the Kea ventures further down the mountains, whereas the rock wren stays above the bushline its entire life. Rock wrens are small, green and oval shaped, and potentially my new favourite bird. They're uniquely adapted to the environment with their long legs and big feet. It makes them excellent rock hoppers. This is compensated by them having smaller wings, making them not particularly good at flying. This is one of the primary reasons they're not so widespread, as they can't move far from where they hatch. Being most commonly found throughout Fiordland's Alps and up through Ouraki, with localised populations around Arthur's Pass and Nelson. Despite being not so widespread, they're quite happy where it is, cheerfully flitting about the alpine boulder fields in search of hard-to-reach shrubbery where their prey is hiding. These rocks where they make their homes as well, building their burrow in and amongst them. These nests are a toasty 30 degrees in the wintertime, whereas the outside world could be sub-zero. These nests are also where they're most at risk. Like the Kea, stoats are a major predator of the rock wren, and even mice make the journey up the mountain to feed on their eggs. In addition to predators, it's expected that their populations may fall off as temperatures rise and they could lose their habitat. Rock wrens share their habitat with another endemic species to New Zealand, and it's somewhat of an oddity. The black-eyed gecko, no relation to the black-eyed peas, is the world's only alpine gecko. Sensing a bit of a theme in the species selection here for this video, but that just shows how awesome it is here and how many unique species in a fairly limited habitat. This gecko is named for its beady black eyes that stick out against its rocky grey skin that helps it camouflage. Having only been discovered in the last 50 years, there's still much we don't know about it, but it sure is a curiosity. Being endemic to the Kaikoura Range, it spends its days underneath stones and rock slabs, with a preference for marble and argillite. Living between 1,250 metres and 2,200 metres, well, food doesn't grow very often, so it has to supplement its diet with insects. Lucky for them, at this altitude, there's no competition to this diet. At this altitude as well, predators don't pose much of a threat to our little friend, as they've adapted to the old bird that might take them out by becoming completely nocturnal. Nocturnal means they only come out at night time. Though there is concern, if feral groats were to grow in population, they could wipe out the gecko's habitat by consuming all the food. Obviously, Aotearoa has a lot more going on in the animal department than some people might think. And this really goes against the idea that New Zealand only has boring animals, doesn't it? It's just one of the many reasons I love getting outside in my environment. These chance encounters with some of the most unique animals on the planet, with some of the most spectacular scenery around. That's more than enough for me, isn't it? Well, that's our time. Thanks for joining me, and ka kite anō.